Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today. And here joining us as usual, Mark Maynard, our managing editor, Life Issues reporter Tessa Redmond, and content editor Chip Hutchison. Guys, I want to start with a really heartbreaking story that we reported this week out of Kentucky. A former UK student, former cheerleader, pleading guilty to manslaughter in the killing of her newborn child. Tessa, tell us the really tragic story of Laken Snelling.
Yes, so this dates back to August of last year. Laken Snelling was a UK student athlete, and what happened was there was a call to emergency services around 10:30 in the morning, and they found that her newborn had been wrapped in a towel and placed in a trash bag in her home. And she had left at the time, and when she came back, she was taken to the hospital and questioned by police. And so she has been charged with concealing a birth, tampering with physical evidence, and also manslaughter. There's another charge that I can't recall off the top of my head right now. But she initially pleaded not guilty to those charges, the manslaughter charge. She was actually indicted on that back in March by a grand jury. And they indicted her on that charge because they believed, based upon the evidence that they had seen, that she committed manslaughter with the intent to cause serious physical harm to her child. The coroner, or the Kentucky Medical Examiner's office, determined that the child was born alive and that he had been asphyxiated by some undetermined means. So she pleaded not guilty to that manslaughter charge initially in April, but this past Friday, August the 21st, she came back and she pleaded guilty to all charges. And as part of that plea deal, she had to tell the court what she did. And so she said that she was under extreme emotional distress or stress. Her baby came quicker than expected, and instead of helping him, she ended his life. And when the judge asked her how she ended his life, she said by depriving him of oxygen. So there's certain details of this case that we're not going to know because this is not going to go to trial. What she did initially tell investigators was that she gave birth around 4 a.m. back in August of last year. At some point, she passed out or fell asleep on top of her son. And when she woke up, he was blue and purple. And never in that time did she call for emergency services or call for help, but she cleaned up and moved his body and then left the residence. And her roommates were actually the ones who discovered her newborn son and made that initial 911 call. So it's tragic and awful all the way around.
Both good descriptions, tragic, awful. But what's frustrating, or I can't even think of the word, maybe morally inconsistent about this case, is that if she had gone to a neighboring state, Illinois, or driven to Massachusetts, as we talked about last week, she could have gotten an abortion. The baby still would have been dead, but she wouldn't have been charged. So the inconsistency there in our culture is maddening.
It is. It's very frustrating because depending on where you are, if the baby's inside the womb, even at that far along in pregnancy, a death inside the womb is treated differently legally than a death outside the womb, even where intent is present. So Snelling, she faces up to 13 years in prison based upon these charges. 10 of those come from the manslaughter charge. That's what the prosecution is recommending as part of the plea deal. If the judge happens to sentence her to more, which is going to happen in mid-October, she could appeal that decision.
Tragic story. Pray for that young lady that she will come to know Christ and receive healing from this story. But Tessa, thank you for covering it. Stories like this are always very difficult, whether it's an abortion or, in this case, what is determined to be manslaughter. It's still tragic.
Yeah.
All right, the big national news of the day, the death of Dolly Parton. And I think you'd all agree with what's being said about her, that she was indeed a cultural icon. Mark, Chip, Tessa, your thoughts on Dolly Parton's death and the kind of the national reaction, worldwide reaction to it?
I thought it was interesting that, she's 80 years old and she wrote like 3,000 songs and, 10 CMA awards, an Emmy, just countless accolades and things. But you know what? You didn't hear about that yesterday. After that, you heard about, what a good person she was, how generous she was, and all that. It wasn't about, all the musical awards that she, rightfully earned and won. And, just from listening to her, it didn't seem like that kind of thing was really that important to her anyway, and she did a lot of good things, just tremendously generous, with things, including the Imagination Library that's provided thousands and thousands of books to children, which that's, part of her Kentucky heritage a little bit, that Kentucky was involved with some of that. So fortunately, but it's been interesting. She's somebody that everybody loves, it would seem, and she'll be missed for sure.
Yes. I found it very interesting. 2019, the New York Times had an article, and the headline was, "Is there anything we can all agree on?" Yes, Dolly Parton. And I think that has been the kind of the crux of all the comments that we've seen, is that she was loved by everyone. And of course, that song that she is one of many songs she is so famous for, "I Will Always Love You." There's a comment I saw by one blogger that said, "She did not just sing 'I Will Always Love You.' That's what she did." And certainly her actions demonstrate her love for people, and coming from the very rough, poverty-stricken childhood, to be so magnanimous in her giving. I did find one quote from her that I think is very significant, because we heard her talk about the name of God sometimes, oftentimes, really, but we did not really hear what her thoughts were about God. But she wrote this: "God is my co-writer and my co-pilot. Anything that I do, I always keep God first and foremost, because I feel like that is where I draw my strength." So I thought that was a really neat quote, and I was glad to come across that.
Yeah, well, I want to dig into that further in a second, but Tessa, just give me your perspective on the passing of Dolly Parton.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting how, as a culture, how parasocial we are in an age of social media, with people that we don't really know. I mean, I know for me, in my generation, a lot of us maybe necessarily didn't grow up listening to Dolly Parton. I think we maybe know her more for her character and for her philanthropy and for Dollywood and things like that. But my daughter is actually a beneficiary of the Imagination Library, so I'm just so thankful that she, in an age of self-service, has chosen to give to others, that they might have wonderful books, for example. I just think that's a wonderful part of her legacy. And just looking at all the coverage following her death, that seems to be something that was highlighted a lot, was just her generosity and her heart for other people. And I think that's really commendable.
I actually met Dolly Parton one time years ago when I worked in a station in Knoxville, Tennessee, early 80s. Yes, I'm old. But they named a stretch of roadway in the Sevierville area where she's from. They named it after her. And she was there for a news conference, and she was very pleasant, very grateful. But the joke was that it was ironic that they named this road after her because it was the least curvy road in the area. So that was the joke about that, naming that road after her. But Chip, you mentioned her faith. She talked a lot about her faith, about God, but where she was about spirituality, but kind of where she stood was a bit of a mystery. We know that her grandfather was a Pentecostal preacher, but we don't quite know kind of where she was as far as the Christian faith. She seemed to be a believer, but we don't really know what she believed.
That's very true, Lawrence. And she definitely did some of the things you would think a Christian follower of Jesus would do, though. I will say, with her generosity and with her wanting to help the less fortunate and things like that. But you're right, you never really heard exactly how she believed.
I think that's interesting. That seems to be just indicative of the way she was. I mean, I know, for example, she also didn't talk specifically about politics. So the fact that she didn't I guess, openly come out speaking specifically about her faith seems to be consistent.
Yeah, I guess it was part of her trying to appeal to everyone, and she did. Uh, as you mentioned earlier, Mark, the fact that both the right and the left are applauding her, and I think
Yeah.
part of it is because she didn't take herself too seriously, and I think
Yes.
that endeared her to people. So we pray that she was a believer in Christ, and that, but she certainly leaves a pleasant legacy for people to remember for the most part. All right. Last week, we talked about what Kentucky Baptist churches are doing to engage the public schools. This week, a new law that could be a huge benefit for Christian schools in Kentucky. I talked to David Walls of the Family Foundation of Kentucky about the federal tax credit that Kentuckians can take advantage of starting just a few months next year.
Yeah, this is the Education Freedom Tax Credit that was a part of the One Big Beautiful Bill that had passed last year, but it required states to have to opt in. Any taxpayer in the country can take advantage of this very powerful $1,700 tax credit, but states have to opt in to ensure that students in their own states can be the beneficiaries of these scholarships that this tax credit fuels. And so because our governor was not willing to opt Kentucky in, our state legislature took action and opted us in legislatively through the Secretary of State's office. And I'll share with you, Lawrence, it's one of those things that's actually, I think, going to be a tremendous blessing for Kentucky because we've kind of secured ourselves as having perpetually opted in to this powerful new tax credit legislatively, which is going to free us up from what some of the other states may experience whose governors just opted them in, and then maybe to the whims of whether if they get a new governor that decides to opt them out. So very thankful for the foresight and the leadership of the General Assembly to pass House Bill 1, and we were certainly very supportive of it and happy to help in that effort. But what I'm more excited about is what it actually means and what it can fuel for Kentucky moving forward.
I want to get to that in just a second, but to clarify, the state Supreme Court last year, I think, declared a state version of this unconstitutional, but this is outside of that, a federal version.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of problems, and I won't go over them all with the state Supreme Court ruling from a couple years back on a similar state level program. But the reality is this is a federal tax credit. It's in federal law. It has absolutely nothing to do with state dollars or diverting state funds in any form or fashion. And further, I would say, Lawrence, this is a tax credit that incentivizes private donations. So these are private donations that are going to be incentivized by a very powerful federal tax credit. So ultimately, the scholarship dollars that become available that we want to see Christian schools take full advantage of is completely fueled by private donations.
You touched on this, but the governor, he didn't veto this bill, but he let it become law kind of without his signature, as I recall.
Well, I believe he actually vetoed it.
Yeah, he did. You're right. He did. Let me start again.
Yeah,
The governor did veto this bill, saying that he was concerned it would divert funds from public schools. What do you say to that argument that he's making?
Well, again, it doesn't divert any dollars from public schools. In fact, it adds the opportunity to put more dollars into public schools. So to be very clear, this federal tax credit can be used to help scholarship and provide other educational expenses for students in public schools, private schools, and even homeschooled. And we've already seen actually some announcements, and my understanding that there's some organizations that are going to set up a scholarship granting organization, an SGO, that will help raise funds to support public school students. So really the question that the ideologues like the governor and some in the legislature, although I say there was bipartisan support at the end of the day for this bill, was that did we want Kentucky taxpayers to take advantage of this new tax credit, but then be forced to have those dollars go out of Kentucky to scholarship students in other states instead of allowing those private dollars that are being raised in Kentucky to bless Kentucky students. And so, again, it shows kind of the ideology of the governor wanting to put his ideology above what's helping students. But thankfully, that argument didn't win out. And I think you're going to continue to see across the country a growing bipartisan consensus because again, this frees up dollars to potentially benefit students in pretty much any school context.
So, what do you hope the impact will be? What are the possibilities here?
Yeah, well, this is where it's really important, I think, for folks just at an individual level, a family level, to understand how this works. So essentially what the federal government has done in this legislation is really for the first time say, we're going to allow you, the taxpayer, to steward a portion of your tax liability. We all owe taxes at different levels to the federal government. So up to $1,700 of our federal tax liability can be stewarded. And what we want to see happen at the Family Foundation is to see Christian education blessed by that. So we're arguing and making the case, and I appreciate the opportunity to publish an op-ed on this recently in Kentucky Today, Lawrence, that this is the biggest opportunity to expand Christian education in Kentucky's history. And it really is a call to biblical stewardship because all of us as individuals, starting January 1 of next year, will be given the opportunity to say, do we want to take advantage of the ability to steward our tax liability and essentially make a free donation to bless Christian education? And then those dollars given to a scholarship granting organization, an SGO, can then go fuel scholarships for more students in Christian schools. And so you can actually designate your donation to go to scholarship students at a particular school. And so what an opportunity we have to be good stewards of our resources. And we want to be a part of helping equip our Christian schools across Kentucky to be informed in how they can take advantage of this. Because really, when it starts taking off, I think it can take off like wildfire, and schools can help equip their communities, their parents, their grandparents, the churches, and those in the community that may be a part of the school or helping host the school, at their church facility to take advantage of this. And we can, I believe, make an impact and say, any Kentucky family that wants to make a decision to send their child to a Christian school, they desire a gospel-centered Christian education for their child, we can put that in the reach of more Kentucky families with this tax credit. And so that's why I'm so excited about it.
As you said, it begins in January of next year. But is there anything that churches, schools, individuals, potential donors should be doing kind of ahead of that?
Yeah, I mean, one of them is just education and awareness, which is a part of what we're doing, and I'm thankful for this conversation. The second is the Family Foundation is actually helping launch a new effort called the Kentucky Christian Education Network. We're launching a coordinated effort, a new initiative to help equip Christian schools in Kentucky on how to take advantage of that. And to help facilitate their ability to participate in a Christian-based, Christian values scholarship granting organization that's going to help fuel scholarships for Christian students and help fuel advocacy on behalf of Christian education and educational freedom in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so schools and individuals can learn more about that effort at kycen.org. That's Kentucky Christian Education Networks, kycen.org. But look, as I said at the beginning, this has the opportunity to impact and bless students in any school context. The qualification, it's important to mention this. The qualifications for a family and a student in a family to be able to receive a scholarship from these funds is very, very broad. It's actually 300% of the median income in a particular area where the school is. So again, the estimates are nationwide, more than 90% of families, their kids would be able to apply for these scholarships. It could be even higher in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So the reality is this is something that any individual in Kentucky can take advantage of to make this tax credit Any school can choose to partner with a scholarship granting organization and have an opportunity to have funds designated to them. And then the families and students that can be blessed by this is incredibly wide. Like I said, probably over 90% of families. So there really is a way for anyone to get involved, whether you're a family in need or considering Christian education. Whether you're an individual taxpayer or a donor looking to say, I want to be a good steward of my tax liability and take advantage of this. And certainly if you're a school, or particularly a Christian school, and want to take advantage of this in a powerful way to help really expand Christian education in Kentucky, it's a win-win-win across the board.
That's David Walls of the Family Foundation of Kentucky talking about the new federal education tax credit available to Kentuckians starting next year, giving parents more options as far as their child's education. Some parents, of course, are called to send their children to public schools, others to private and Christian schools. Of course, as far as on this call right now, only Tessa has that decision to make among us. We've already been there, but Tessa, you've got more options now for your child when she's ready to go to school.
Yes.
All right. Classes firing up as well on college campuses across Kentucky. And Mark, you did a story about a welcome new addition at the Baptist Campus Ministry at UK.
Yeah, they have, where they're located, Lawrence, in Lexington, is they're on Sorority Row. And across from them is the UK Library. But Daniel Johnson, the campus minister for UK, for the Baptist Campus Ministry there, he saw all these sorority houses all had patios, all had little porches, and that's where people were congregating. That's where, everybody was going here. And this is K week, by the way, at UK, which is the time when everybody, meets everybody, basically, is what it amounts to. So he thought, and they thought about this last spring, that a legacy patio, would be a great idea. And he got his UK alumni board together. They agreed it was a great idea. They began some fundraising. They raised $25,000 in 2 weeks, and they were able to put this thing together. It was interesting. His father, Jerry, was a longtime BSU, I think, at Georgia Southern, and
Baptist Student Union, which used to be.
Baptist,
well, BCM
exactly.
used to be.
Right, well, BCM used to be. And he was at Georgia Southern, and he's, the apple didn't fall far from the tree, I'll tell you that. He's a go-getter, just like Daniel, or Daniel's like him, I guess. And during his time, he actually built a pirate ship that he built in front of their campus ministry center. And it became like a landmark of the school. Everybody knew where the sunken pirate ship was, of course, right? But Daniel put this thing together. They've got a nice pergola, and his dad and his uncle brought some people from Westport Road Baptist Church to help do the finishing touches on this thing. They saved a lot of money because of the work that those guys did. And, Daniel made sure to mention that it wasn't, he was saving cooperative program money for other ministry needs. And by saving that, he was able to do that. But it's a great porch. It can seat 20 people. But this week, Lawrence, they had more than 600 people come through. And, like he said, the front porch is less threatening than going inside. You get to talk to them out front there, and already gospel conversations have been happening there because of that patio, that legacy patio, as they like to call it. And it's a beautiful thing. They got flowers all around, and a really nice built or addition to their center there. So
it's another example, a different kind of example, but a good example of cooperation.
Right.
Westport Road coming in to help, and others coming in cooperating to get this done. That's great. We pray for all our BCM ministries as they begin the year, that we know they're going to have a great impact where it's badly needed on college campuses. Chip, God leads men into pastoral ministry in many different ways. And you told us about the path that led one pastor from a police car to the pulpit.
Yes, Jesse Armstrong was a state trooper for 15 years here in Kentucky and loved his job, loved his people he worked with, loved what they were accomplishing. And that was while he was here in the London, Somerset area. It's very interesting. I found it somewhat amusing. He was undercover working with informants and drug buys, and so in that environment, then he was also active in church, serving as a part-time youth minister. But the time came to when he realized, he said, we were serving a search warrant on a drug case, and he said, I just, when my foot hit the ground, I knew this wasn't what the Lord had for me to do, even though I loved what I was doing. He said, but the people I work with, they depended on me to be fully vested, fully in, because their lives were at stake. So that's what began to really reinforce his call to ministry. Said he and his wife looked at every opportunity. How could he, retire early and get those benefits? And he said, we just couldn't do it. And he said, and I was okay with that because I knew that was what the Lord wanted me to do. And so he served as the interim pastor of his church. They did not form a search committee, and several months later, he was called to be the pastor. So that was last September. He's coming up to his 1 year anniversary at First Baptist Church of London. What's so interesting is he's really focused on the evangelistic thrust of the church. And so he said, we're going to start going door to door. And they set up a specific schedule. The first Sunday afternoon they did that, they had 150 of their church members show up to knocking on doors. And he said it became such a unique experience that people in the community they were taking their picture and posting it on Facebook and talking about how great that was, that people were going door to door to tell everyone they could about the love of Christ and for their need of Christ as Savior. He also jokes that, so he's coming up on his 1 year anniversary. The youth pastor there, it's been there for 2 months. He said, we might be the least experienced ministry staff of a First Baptist church in the United States. And but yet they're doing great work there. Jesse is 43 years old, and just a great illustration of when the Lord calls you, he will equip you and he will take care of you.
This shows how God can call men out of any sort of background
Mm-hmm.
to be effective in ministry, in pastoral ministry. Mark, you have made a Kentucky pastor with the nickname Milkweed a household name among Kentucky Baptists, but recently did a story about a scare that really almost cost him his life.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a story on milkweed last year, and a lot of it was just talking about how he got the nickname and all that. And he basically worked on a dairy farm, and he picked up milkweed. He was like 8 years old, and he got this nickname, and it stuck with him his entire life. He's 74, I think, now, something like that. And he was actually going to the town where he grew up to preach at a 200th anniversary. It was in Tennessee, and he was in Nashville. And the day of that he was supposed to speak, it was like 6 in the morning, and he got out and he said he wanted to go to the Shell station and get him a donut and a cup of coffee. And he got out and he pulled out, and about the time he pulled out, a guy hit him, he said, going 100 miles an hour. And he had to be going pretty fast because the vehicle he was in rolled over 8 to 10 times. And amazingly, there were no broken bones, no, serious injury. Of course, he was sore, but, nothing major. And he went to the hospital and got checked out and everything, and came home the next day. And the next day he had a funeral to do, and he went to it. He was, and then he had another one the next day and another one 2 days after that. He's a nonstop kind of guy. He worked in the morgue there in Owington, and he he said, I thought my wife was going to have to come and identify me anymore. He said, and he looked really bad. He said, he had black eyes, and he did have a lot of bruises from the accident. But he was just so thankful, and he said, and you know what? I'm also thankful it didn't happen in my car. It happened in a rental car. But he said, I have to deal with Enterprise now, but at least I have my car. So anyway, he's a character, just like his nickname you would think he would be. But he is very beloved in Owen County, where he has a church where he does Pleasant Grove Church there in Owen County, and very popular there for sure.
We're grateful Milkweed is doing okay. All right, I want to move now. We're out of time, but I want to move to care or don't care. College football begins this weekend, but the big news is not on the playing field, but in the courtroom. Unfortunately, the NCAA gave players a fifth year of eligibility for those whose eligibility ran out last year, and this year, 2026. But now players who were in school before that and their eligibility ran out, they're suing to get another year of eligibility, including some players who signed NFL contracts, wanting to go back to college because the money, believe it or not, is better there. Here's the care or don't care. Will this chaos affect your enjoyment of college football this year? Tessa, let's start with you. I don't know if you enjoy college football at all, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I don't enjoy college football. I don't care about college football. If anything, I don't care for the way that college football has become far more professional in nature. I think it takes away from the sport itself, and also the purpose of going to college is to get an education, not to make millions of dollars playing sports. But I do think it's interesting. I'm not really in the sports world, and particularly like with football, basketball is more my area that I pay attention to. But that story about the court case was certainly very fascinating to see the different perspectives, and putting a limit on college eligibility and how that might impact athletes who were eligible and now aren't, and things like that. It's certainly interesting, but I don't know that I can say that I care about how it's going to impact college sports.
All right, the two UK fans, care or don't care?
I care because I really love watching college football, and I'm probably opposite Tessa on that. But I do hate what's happening, and not just college sports in general. And it's so confusing. It's just like even this week, Louisville gets Seth Trimble, and he signs him and all that. And Kentucky gets Mark Martin, the great player from Missouri, and they sign him, and all of a sudden Trimble's not eligible, but Martin was. And I'm like, why? What? And it comes down to the states, and how, where your case was adjudicated, I guess. It depends on that. And I don't know. This isn't sustainable. What's happening in college football and college basketball, it's not. I don't know how they can fix it. I don't have an answer for that. But as far as do or don't care, I would really miss college football if it weren't played for whatever reason.
Chip?
Yeah, I care certainly, and pretty much on the same thought process as Mark. My goodness, let's look at what is happening in the last decade, even the last 5 years in college sports. And college loyalty is out the window with the transfer portal, with NIL. And this just adds another layer of discontent and discomfort for fans who follow or are loyal to their colleges. And you think, could this get any worse? And I guess it could but I don't see how right now. I think this is beyond the sense of reasonableness that you're opening the door for every kind of exception. And truly is a way that college sports is being destroyed, in my opinion, because I don't care about college sports like I used to because of the different rulings on transfer portal, NIL, et cetera, that have happened over these last few years.
Yeah, I agree. I care. I will be at every U of L football game this year, God willing. But I am concerned that they're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg if they don't get this thing under control.
Yeah.
So I care that they find some solutions to the problems in not just college football, but college athletics, which is more
Yeah.
pro now than anything else.
You know, there's such passion in college football, and just hearing Chip's story about the pastor from London and how they got 150 people out, to knock on doors and visit and whatnot. And I'm thinking these stadiums who are really worshiping these guys, 70,000, 80,000 people, if you could somehow change that scenario to get their minds right, wow. I mean, the world would turn upside down.
Very true. Very true. All right, we're over time, so we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching and for listening. Please tell others about the Kentucky Today podcast. Give our podcast a positive review on your favorite app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search for Kentucky Today podcast. For more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention and in the cooperative program that makes this program possible, go to kybaptist.org. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.